I worked as a scientist at a government research facility that specialized in the study of extraterrestrial life forms. We had a secure and highly advanced facility, with multiple layers of security measures to ensure that nothing could get in or out without our knowledge. However, something went terribly wrong during one of our experiments. We were trying to extract DNA from a newly discovered alien species, and accidentally released a virus that we had never seen before. It spread like wildfire, infecting every single person in the facility. At first, we thought we could contain it. We set up quarantine zones and tried to treat the infected with various antiviral agents. But the virus kept mutating and evolving, and the more we tried to fight it, the worse it got. People began to show symptoms of the virus: high fever, delirium, and a strange rash all over their bodies. We knew that we were dealing with something far beyond our understanding, and it was spreading faster than we could contain it. It wasn't long before chaos erupted in the facility. People were dying left and right, and those who were still alive were running around in a frenzy, trying to find a way out. The virus had somehow made them aggressive and violent, and they attacked anyone who got in their way. We tried to barricade ourselves in our lab, but it wasn't enough. The virus had found a way to penetrate even the most secure areas of the facility. We could hear the infected banging on the doors, trying to get in. That's when we saw it. The virus had somehow fused with the DNA of the alien species we were studying, creating a grotesque hybrid creature. It was unlike anything we had ever seen before, with elongated limbs and razor-sharp teeth. It tore through the facility, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. As the creature approached our lab, we knew we had to act fast. We had no choice but to use our last resort, a self-destruct mechanism that would destroy the entire facility, along with the virus and the creature. We activated the mechanism and ran for our lives, hoping that we could make it out before the facility exploded. We sprinted through the corridors, dodging infected individuals and leaping over debris. The creature was hot on our heels, its guttural roars echoing through the halls. As we made our way through the lab, we could see that the virus was spreading rapidly. People were collapsing left and right, coughing up blood and struggling to breathe. It was like something out of a nightmare. We finally made it to the quarantine area, where we were able to lock ourselves in and seal off the rest of the facility. But even as we huddled together, safe from the virus, we knew that our situation was dire. We were trapped, with no way out and no hope of help. The virus continued to mutate and evolve, becoming more deadly with each passing moment. It was like it had a mind of its own, adapting to our attempts to contain it and spreading faster than we could ever hope to keep up with. Days turned into weeks, and we began to lose track of time. We were running low on food and supplies, and the virus showed no signs of slowing down. We were all infected now, with no way to know who would survive and who wouldn't. In the end, only a handful of us made it out alive. We were rescued by a team of specialists who had been sent in to contain the virus and destroy the facility. They had arrived too late to save our colleagues, but they were able to stop the virus from spreading any further. But even as we were airlifted out of the quarantine area, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only narrowly avoided a much larger disaster. The aliens had been smarter and more adaptable than we ever could have imagined, and we were lucky to have survived at all. We had survived, but at a terrible cost. Our research facility was gone, along with our colleagues and friends. And we knew that we could never let anything like this happen again. The aliens we were studying were far too dangerous, and we had underestimated the power of their genetic material. From that day on, we swore never to meddle with extraterrestrial life forms again. Now let's hop onto story number 2, but before I begin reading, make sure that you have subscribed to Mr. Scare for regular horror podcasts. I had always dreamed of owning my own house, a place where my wife and I could start our family and grow old together. So, when we stumbled upon a beautiful old home in a small town, we jumped at the chance to make it our own. It was a fresh start, a chance to build a life together in a community where everyone knew each other's names. At first, everything seemed perfect. The house had character and charm, and the town was quaint and peaceful. But soon, we began to notice strange occurrences. we'd see strange lights in the sky at night, and the shadows seemed to be filled with unexplainable movements. At first, we assumed it was just a weather phenomenon, but the lights were too erratic and too bright to be anything natural. Then, we started to see shadows moving outside our windows at night. We wrote it off as our imaginations getting the best of us, but we couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. As time passed, the occurrences became more frequent and more sinister. As the days went by, the strange occurrences continued to escalate. One night, I woke up to the sound of something scratching at our bedroom window. I turned on the lamp on my nightstand, and my heart stopped at the sight of two glowing red eyes staring back at me. I woke up my wife, and we both ran to the living room, where we huddled together on the couch, trying to make sense of what was happening. We heard strange noises coming from outside, like something was moving around our house. My wife was shaking with fear, and I knew I had to do something to protect her. I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and went outside, determined to confront whatever was out there. As I stepped onto the porch, I saw a dark figure moving towards me. It was about 6 feet tall, with elongated limbs and a bulbous head. Its eyes were the same glowing red I had seen before. When I turned back to ask my wife to run away, she was nowhere to be found. She had just disappeared. I turned back to the monstrous creature, but it was nowhere to see either. It was as if it was never there. I searched the entire house for my wife and the surrounding area, but there was no sign of her. I called the police, but they were of no help. They told me she probably just left, but I knew in my heart that something more sinister had happened. Then, I began to notice strange figures lurking in the shadows outside the house, watching me. They were humanoid, but their features were distorted and inhuman. I knew then that we were being targeted by something not of this world. As I investigated further, I discovered that our small town was a hotbed of alien activity. There were reports of strange sightings and unexplained occurrences going back decades. And now, my wife was missing, and I was being hunted by an alien race for experimentation. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted any chance of finding my wife and escaping the clutches of these otherworldly beings. I reached out to a small group of locals who had been investigating the town's strange occurrences for years, hoping they could help me. Together, we uncovered a secret government facility that had been conducting experiments on the town's residents for years, and my wife was one of their latest victims. With their help, I was able to infiltrate the facility and rescue my wife, but not without a fight. The aliens were not going to let us go so easily. We battled through the facility's twisted corridors and confronted the creatures responsible for the town's horrors. In the end, we emerged victorious, but not without scars. My wife and I left that town and never looked back, haunted by the memories of what we had endured. But we also left with a newfound respect for the unknown and the realization that we were not alone in this vast universe. Every time we looked up at the night sky, we wondered if there were more of those creatures out there, waiting to hunt us down. I never believed in aliens, or anything supernatural for that matter, until they showed up on my doorstep. It started a few weeks ago when my family and I began to notice odd things happening around our property. We would hear strange noises in the night, and our animals were acting skittish and agitated. We wrote it off as the usual wild animals in the area, until one night we saw something we couldn't explain. My wife and I were sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the stars come out. Suddenly, a bright light illuminated the field behind our house, and we both jumped up to see what it was. At first, we thought it was a helicopter, but as it came closer, we could see that it was something else entirely. It was a spacecraft, hovering silently in the air. We were frozen in fear as we watched it for what felt like hours. Eventually, it moved away and disappeared from sight. We were both shaken and didn't know what to do, so we decided to keep it to ourselves and try to forget about it. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few nights, we would see the light again, moving around our property and hovering over different areas. It was clear that they were studying us, and it made us feel violated and powerless. We couldn't sleep, and our nerves were on edge constantly. Then, things started getting even stranger. Our animals began to disappear, one by one. At first, we thought they had run away, but there was no trace of them anywhere. It was as if they had been taken, abducted by whoever was flying that spacecraft. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, we heard a knocking at the door. It was a soft, persistent tapping that wouldn't stop. I grabbed my shotgun and cautiously made my way to the door, peeking through the window to see who was there. There was no one. Just the empty, dark night. But as I turned to go back inside, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I swung my shotgun around just in time to see a figure darting away from our property and disappearing into the woods. It was humanoid, but definitely not human. It was too tall and thin, with elongated limbs and a strange, elongated head. I felt my stomach drop as I realized that this was not a hoax or a prank, this was real. We started to research everything we could about extraterrestrial life, and what we found was not reassuring. There were countless stories of people being abducted, experimented on, and never returning. We knew that we had to protect ourselves and our family at all costs. One night, we heard the tapping at the door again. But this time, we were prepared. My wife and I stood on either side of the door, weapons at the ready. As the tapping continued, we heard a faint whispering outside. "Please, let us in. We mean no harm." We didn't believe them. We knew that they were here to take us, to experiment on us, to do God knows what. So we held our ground and refused to let them in. It's been a week since then, and we haven't seen or heard from them since. But we know they're still out there, watching us, waiting for their chance to strike. We're always on edge, always listening for the slightest sound. Our once peaceful life has been shattered by the knowledge that we are not alone in the universe, and that there are beings out there who are far more advanced and dangerous than we could ever imagine. I had always known that something strange was going on in our town. People had been acting weird lately, and strange lights had been appearing in the sky at night. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but as the days went on, the situation only seemed to get worse. One night, I was driving home from work when I saw something that I would never forget. A bright light appeared in the sky, and I saw what looked like a spaceship hovering above the town. I couldn't believe my eyes. I pulled over to the side of the road and watched in horror as the spaceship descended towards the town. As I drove closer to the town, I could see that something was definitely wrong. The streets were deserted, and there was an eerie silence that hung over everything. It was like the town had been abandoned. I decided to investigate and drove towards the center of town. As I got closer, I saw something that made my blood run cold. People were being lifted off the ground and pulled into the spaceship. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like something out of a science fiction movie. I quickly parked my car and tried to run away, but it was too late. A bright light engulfed me, and the next thing I knew, I was inside the spaceship. I was surrounded by strange, alien creatures who seemed to be studying me with great interest. As I looked around, I realized that there were other people there as well. They were all from the town, and they looked just as scared and confused as I was. We were all strapped into chairs, and there was no escape. The aliens began to do strange experiments on us. They poked and prodded us with their strange instruments, and we could do nothing but scream in agony. I knew then that we were all going to die. But then, something miraculous happened. One of the aliens began to speak to us in English. It told us that they had come to our planet to study us, and that they had chosen our town because it was small and isolated. I didn't believe a word they were saying. I knew that they were here to do something terrible to us, and that we were all going to die here in this spaceship. Suddenly, the spaceship shook violently, and we heard a loud explosion. The aliens quickly became agitated and began to shout in their strange language. I could feel the ship start to lose altitude, and I knew that something had gone horribly wrong. We crashed in a remote area of the Midwest, and the survivors stumbled out of the wreckage. As we looked around, we realized that we were in the middle of nowhere. There was no hope of rescue, and we were all alone. But then, we saw something that gave us hope. In the distance, we could see a military convoy heading towards us. We ran towards them, shouting and waving our arms. We were finally going to be rescued. As we approached the convoy, something strange happened. The soldiers began to back away from us, and I realized that they were pointing their guns at us. They thought we were aliens. I tried to explain to them that we were just survivors of a spaceship crash, but it was no use. They were convinced that we were the enemy. And that's when I realized that the true horror of our situation was not the aliens, but the fact that we were now the monsters. I had always thought that my small town in rural America was the safest place on Earth. Nothing bad ever happened here, and life was simple and predictable. But all of that changed one summer when our town became the site of a string of bizarre abductions. At first, it was just a few isolated incidents. People reported strange, otherworldly experiences, but no one took them seriously. It wasn't until my friend Mark went missing that we realized something truly sinister was happening in our town. Mark was a simple guy, never one to make up stories or seek attention. So when he told us that he had been taken aboard an alien spacecraft and experimented on, we knew that something was seriously wrong. We formed a small group to investigate the strange occurrences in our town, determined to get to the bottom of things and bring Mark home. It wasn't long before we began to uncover some truly terrifying evidence. There were crop circles in the fields surrounding our town, strange lights in the sky, and mysterious objects found in the woods. The townsfolk began to realize that we had become a hotbed of alien activity and that we may be in grave danger. As we delved deeper into the investigation, strange things started happening to us as well. My friend Sarah woke up in the middle of the night with strange markings on her skin, and I had terrifying nightmares of being abducted and experimented on. We knew that we needed to act fast before things got even worse. We decided to set up a trap for the aliens, to catch them in the act and find out what they were after. We stationed ourselves in the woods with cameras and recording equipment, waiting for something to happen. And sure enough, we saw them. Strange, otherworldly creatures with long, thin limbs and glowing eyes, moving silently through the trees. We followed them to a clearing where we saw something truly horrifying. A group of aliens were conducting experiments on humans, and we realized that Mark was among them. We knew that we had to act fast if we were going to save him. We burst into the clearing, yelling and screaming, and the aliens turned their attention to us. They were fast and strong and had powers that we could barely comprehend. But we were determined to fight back and save our friend. The battle was long and brutal, and we lost some of our group along the way. But in the end, we emerged victorious. We had saved Mark and driven the aliens out of our town. We never knew exactly what they were after or why they had chosen our town, but we knew that we had to remain vigilant to keep watch for any signs of their return. Our town would never be the same again, but we had survived. And we knew that if we ever encountered the aliens again, we would be ready to fight back, no matter the cost.